Hello everyone, my name is Karina. I go by Kartsy on social media, and today's video is the next video of the Kyoshi Warrior cosplay series, in which I am part of the Cosbond Creator Contest 2020. And my goal is to bring to life the Kyoshi Warrior uniform using historical elements. So in the last video, I talked all about why I think Japanese dress influences the most the uniform of the Kyoshi Warriors. And in that video, I talked about the Kendo martial art uniform. And that applies even to here. In that video, I made what I am wearing right now, which is the kikogi. And now we're gonna go into my favorite part so far, which is the building of the Hakama, and you are able to spy it a little bit right here. So there are two different types of Hakama, divided and undivided. Or to put it more simply, like almost like a pant version and a skirt version. Traditionally, the pant version of the Hakama is worn by men, but in all the Japanese martial arts that I've seen so far, women wear it too. So in this case, gender doesn't matter with the pant version. So let me tell you why I think the Hakama the Kyoshi Warriors wear is the pant version. So for a majority of the show of Avatar: The Last Airbender, you see the Kyoshi Warriors wearing the skirt version of the Hakama, and it's even referenced to at one point in the first appearance of the Kyoshi Warriors, which is in Book 1, Episode 4, when Aang calls what Sokka is wearing,
"Hey Sokka, nice dress."
A dress. Now that implies that the Hakama is undivided. But there is one scene in that same episode earlier on when the Kyoshi Warriors are falling from the sky and making their grand entrance as characters of this universe. And in that scene, if you pause, you can see that they are wearing the pant version of the Hakama. It is only one time in the whole show I have found so far to see evidence of the pant version of the Hakama worn by the Kyoshi Warriors, but if I am to translate this uniform into reality, I have to take under consideration that when these warrior women kick, they might not want to show what's underneath. So I want to go with what's more practical and do the pant version of the Hakama, especially since in martial arts, this is the version that even women wear. So for this build, I will be making the pant version of the Hakama, but it is safe to assume that the Kyoshi Warriors probably have both versions for their uniform. So let's get into it. So to start off with this Hakama, I'm going to be using a linen blend fabric that I already have and dyeing it a darker color. Okay, so right now I have just covered the floor with this, and I'm going to be using this bucket to dye my fabric. Oh, that's hot. Mom, this bucket's broken. Okay, this bucket's leaking, so I have to transfer the water somewhere else. We're gonna need more water. So I'm gonna be putting on my gloves, and unfortunately, I don't know how much my fabric is, meaning the weight of my fabric. And because I don't know the weight of my fabric, I don't know how much dye to put in. And I pre-washed my fabric, so there's water in my fabric now. And because there's water in my fabric, the weight is off and I can't measure it correctly. So I'm just gonna go ahead and try, and most likely I'm gonna use the whole container of dye. So next we're gonna go in and we're gonna add salt. Okay, so the color of the fabric is about like a turquoisey color. So I'm hoping that with the dark green dye it gets to the color that I want, which is this very deep green for the Hakama of the Kyoshi Warrior costume. So I'm gonna put all this linen blend into the bucket, little by little. And I'm just gonna poke it in to help it get in there. Please note, I have never dyed fabric before, so this is very much an experiment. So let's poke this fabric in. Now what I don't want is air bubbles, because air bubbles is gonna create pockets where the dye is not gonna be the same color as the rest of the material, and I want everything to be a very solid color. So let me just try to maneuver this around a bit. Okay, this got heavy. Now we're going in and washing the fabric again, this time to take out whatever we could not rinse out by hand. Unfortunately, the first time around when I dyed the fabric, it did not come out the color that I wanted. So I had to repeat all those steps again, and I added in this time a little bit of black dye. Okay, so someone on Instagram, and I'll have them linked right here, left a message on my post about dyeing fabric when I did the first dye of the fabric, and recommended that I soak the material in vinegar and water after having it dye so that the material retains the color better. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I just got my bucket with my school emblem on it, and I'm gonna be filling it with vinegar and water. I'm just squeezing it out a little bit, and then I'm gonna slowly get the fabric into the other bucket full of vinegar. So the fabric's been out here in the vinegar for a while, so I'm gonna go ahead and take it in. It's been about 2 hours. Okay, so I ran into a problem. I don't have enough material for the pattern pieces. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go the historical route of how to make a Hakama, and I'm gonna start measuring my material. So for now, I am not gonna be using the Hakama pattern that I have from the McCall's pattern, and instead I am going to cut 13-inch wide strips, which is about how a loom would have been historically for a Hakama. And then most likely I'll have 4 panels for each leg, and then a section here for the Himo. And then I'll have this long strip left over to do other pieces for the Hakama. Let's do this. And these are all my leftover scraps. It's all marked out, and because this piece was able to be completely together, I'm not going to be cutting this out. And instead, I'm going to keep the panels together and sew the 4th panel on. And I'm going to sew a 1/2 inch down this seam. And now what I'm doing is something that I like to refer to as almost like a reverse French hem, where I just fold the fabric in on itself to seal off the raw material, and then I pin it. And I keep doing that all the way down the fabric. And then after I do that, I take it to the machine. And the result is a finished seam like this. So there was a thing with the panels that I didn't have to cut the strips because it was all one big piece. It was just the 4th piece that I had to sew together. So to create the illusion of 4 panels, I went ahead and pinched the fabric to create tiny seams. So to get the fabric to look like that, I grabbed the chalk mark that I made, fold the fabric, pull down my pressure foot, and sew. And the result is a fabric that looks like this. I sewed the 2 crotch panels together, and I did a French seam. And for the sides of the Hakama, which are at an angle so that you can see the kikoji, I simply folded down that edge and sewed it down, making sure to hide all the raw edges. So it's about now that I realized, oh, this should not be one panel. It needs to be seam ripped up to a certain point to actually make it a pant and not the skirt version of Hakama. According to my measurements, I'm going to seam rip up to a certain point, and that point is going to be the exact length of 16.25 inches. So I'm going to keep 16.25 inches and seam rip the rest. And I'm doing this for both panels. And I'm going to take this crotch piece and sew it along here. And at this part of the process, I have a giant pair of pants. Don't worry, this is gonna get pleated down. So I am working on my Hakama and I am realizing that I really should not have used that pattern and relied on it to help me construct this. It was good for measuring everything out and figuring out if I had enough fabric or not, and for generally giving me a better understanding of what some of the shapes of the pieces look like. But this back of this piece is not what I wanted. I'm looking at other examples of this back piece, and I believe the pronunciation is Koshi-ita? I'm not entirely sure. I'll have the word up right now. But for this piece, I think to fix it, I'm going to see if there's some way I can narrow it more to get it more at that angle that is prevalent in the actual pieces of this garment. I'm going to experiment on this piece right here, which is what I'm using as interfacing to get the general shape. So let's see. So we have 9, 8 is 4, 4.5 is the midpoint. So this is the general shape I have, and I'm going to see if this is enough. And I barely have enough to cut this into the right shape. Okay, so I think I have the pleat in right for the back. Ignore the band, that has to be sized. But I'm gonna go ahead and try this on and see if everything's sitting right. To get this piece onto here, I'm going to have to seam rip up to here to get this front bit available to pin here. Basically, I'm seam ripping right now. Okay, so what I have done is this layer right here has been removed, well, from the rest of it. And I've pinned that layer onto the band of the pant. And I'm gonna continue to pin that. Okay, here's what I've done. I haven't sewn anything yet, but I've been doing a lot of seam ripping. So I have made the Himo, and I inserted it beneath this part right here, and you can see it peeking in between here. So when you flip it this way, I'm going to sew the first level here, so you see the Himo sandwiched in between. Once that's sewn, I hold it this way, push this up, take this extra bit I have that's left over, fold it, and then lay it down on top of that to cover that seam. And then of course I have to re-sew this down. And now that I have the Hakama all laid out, I have to pleat down this very wide waist. Pleating down the Hakama in the front is proving very difficult for me, so it's going to be a little bit till I get this right. So one thing that I'm doing is I am putting in the pleats permanently. So So I got this idea from a blog post on how to make Hakama, and I'll have that down in the description below. But what's happening is I'm doing a very tiny edge stitch. I'm doing a zigzag onto the edge of where I'm pleating, so that the pleats stay here pretty much permanently, and I don't have to have that much of a hassle to iron the Hakama over and over and over again. So that's what I'm doing, and what I'm discovering, it's actually doing a pretty good job of hiding one of the seams. And now I'm attaching the other Himo. Okay, here is the Hakama, and to start with the Hakama, I have to put my left leg in first. And I'm following along with a video of how to tie this for kendo. So hopefully, because I'm tying it the kendo style way, it will be flat enough for the armor. So it's tied in the back, then I lift up the front. High. Left up. Try again. And without further ado, here is my finished Hakama. Overall, I am actually very happy with how this came out. It is my favorite piece out of everything I've made so far. I love twirling around in it, and the extra volume and the 4-panel legs just feels awesome. I love how when I stand it looks like a skirt, but in reality it's actually pants, and the more I wear it, the more I just want to add it to my everyday wardrobe. It's not perfect, but for my first Hakama, I think I did pretty darn well. The pleats in the front could have been improved by making them a little bit smaller, and the Koshi-ita could have been improved by making it flatter to my back and including a little piece that some Hakama have to make it sit right. Thank you for watching this episode of my Kyoshi Warrior cosplay build. There'll be a new episode next week, so stay tuned.
I need you. I know. Hi.
Miss you.